for those that are under what I would say the mass hysteria, if you suggest to them that there's civil rights violations, they just look at you and they'll blink. What civil rights violations? And I think the question is, why are people like this? And I think the best way to think about that is that when there are taboos, then most of us don't think of the constraints that we have not to do those. If there are, let's say, legal constraints that you're not allowed to do those, we don't consider them legal constraints at all. So, for example, and this is just sort of disgusting, but incest, if there are laws against incest, and there hardly even needs to be laws for the most part, the idea that we're having our freedoms constrained by virtue of there being laws against incest is absurd. We were like, no, that's not really none of us would ever think of it that way at all. Whereas, of course, in some abstract sense, it is constraining the choices of, let's say, I'm just talking about adult incest. Whereas, so for example, if the Biden administration suddenly were to say, apples, just out of the blue, apples no longer can be sold, and there's no backstory, no narrative, there's no time or anything to sort of to create some kind of righteous story about why it's bad to have apples. He says, but we would all feel that it's a civil rights violation. Well, who the hell are you to stop us from eating apples? And the reason that we feel it is because there's no story about why having apples is righteously wrong at all. Everything about COVID became steeped back in March of 2020. So if they send everybody home and say you can't come out of your house, if they shut down businesses, those are, to me, as someone who wasn't pulled up in this hysteria, are obvious, severe civil rights violations. Requiring that people put masks over their facial identity, their emotional expressions, is a clear and obvious civil rights violation. The amount of civil rights violations suddenly went through the roof since 2020, March of 2020. And the reason that most of the people on the other side don't see it is because when this happened, all of these things, anything that was told as part of the narrative, are things that can help this horrible, evil pandemic that's hitting us, became things that we have to do. And so to not do those things, to not lock down, to not wear a mask, to not be vaccinated, all of these things, just as bad as incest. I mean, that's sort of an extreme example, but to their minds, it's no longer a line. It's no longer a noticeable line, because on the other side of it is things that are unethical. That's why it doesn't feel like civil rights violations at all.